even keel. Von Schlichten rose, helping Paula to her feet, and found that they had been kissing one another passionately. They were still in each other's arms when the pitching and rolling of the cutter ceased, and somebody tapped him on the shoulder. He came out of the embrace and looked around. It was Lieutenant J.G. Morrison. "What the devil, Lieutenant?" he demanded. "Sorry to interrupt, sir, but we're starting back to Procyon. And here, you'll want this, I suppose." He held out a glass disc. "I never expected to see it, but at that, it took 3 A-bombs to blow you loose from your monocle." "Oh, that?" Von Schlichten took his trademark and set it in his eye. "I didn't lose it," he lied. "I just jettisoned it. Don't you know, Lieutenant, that no gentleman ever wears a monocle while he's kissing a lady?" He looked around. They were at about 800 to 1,000 feet above the water, with a stiff following wind away from the explosion area. The 90mm gun forward must have been knocked loose and carried away. It was gone, and so was the TV pickup and the radar. Something, probably the gun, had slammed against the front of the bridge. The metal skeleton was bent in, and the armor glass had been knocked out. The cutter was vibrating properly, so the contragravity field had not been disturbed, and her jets were firing. "It was the second and third bombs that did the damage, sir," Morrison was saying. "We'd have gone through the effects of our own bomb with nothing more than a bad shaking. Of course, on contragravity, we're weightless relative to the air mass, but she was built to stand the winds in the high latitudes. But the 2 geek bombs caught us off balance." "You don't need to apologize, Lieutenant. You and your crew behaved splendidly, Lieutenant Commander, best traditions and all that sort of thing. It was a pleasure, Commander. Hope to be aboard with you again, Captain." They found Kent Pickering at the rear of the bridge and joined him looking astern. Even von Schlichten, who had seen H-bombs and Beth cycle bombs, was impressed. Keegark was completely obliterated under an outward rolling cloud of smoke and dust that spread out for 5 miles at the bottom of the towering column. There had been 150,000 people in that city, even if their faces were the faces of lizards and they had 4 arms and quartz-speckled skins. What fraction of them were now alive, he could not guess. He had to remind himself that they were the people who had burned Eric Blount and Hendrik Lemoyne alive, that 2 of the 3 bombs that had contributed to that column of boiling smoke had been made in Keegark, by Keegarkans, and that with a few causal factors altered, he was seeing what would have happened to Konkrook. Perhaps every Terran felt a superstitious dread of nuclear energy turned to the purposes of war, small wonder after what they had done on their own world. For one thing, he thought grimly, the next geek who picks up the idea of soaking a Terran in thermoconcentrate and setting fire to him will drop it again like a hot potato. And the next geek potentate who tries to organize an anti-Terran conspiracy, or the next crazy caravan driver who preached Znid Sudibit, will be lynched on the spot. But this must be the last nuclear bomb used on Uller. Drunkards mourning after resolution, he told himself contemptuously. The next time it will come easier, and easier still the time after that. After you drop the first bomb, there is no turning back, any more than there had been after Hiroshima, 450-odd years ago. Why, he had even been considering just where, against the mountains back of Bork, he would drop a demonstration bomb as a prelude to a surrender demand. You either went on to the inevitable catastrophe, or you realized in time that nuclear armament and nationalism cannot exist together on the same planet, and it is easier to banish a habit of thought than a piece of knowledge. Uller was not ready for membership in the Terran Federation. Then its people must bow to the Terran Pax. The Kragans would help, as proconsuls, administrators now instead of mercenaries, and there must be manned orbital stations, and the residencies must be moved outside the cities, away from possible blast areas. And Sid Harrington's idea of encouraging the natives to own their own contragravity ships must be shelved, for a long time to come. Maybe in a century or so. Kincaid had a good idea at that, a most meritorious idea. He was sold on it already, and he doubted if it would take much salesmanship with Paula either. Already she was clinging to his arm with obvious possessiveness. Maybe their grandchildren and the Kincaid of that time would see Uller a civilized member of the Federation. They paused as the gun cutter nuzzled up to the Procyon and the canvas and tubed gangway was run out and made fast, looking back at the fearful thing that had sprouted from where Keegark had been. "You know," Paula was saying, echoing his earlier thoughts, "but for that female pornographer, that would have been Konkrook." He nodded. "Yes, I hope you won't mind, but there will always be a place in my heart for Hildegarde." Then they turned their backs upon the abomination of Keegark's desolation and went up the gangway together, looking very little like a general and his adjutant. End of chapter 15. Recording by Acacia Wood. End of Uller Uprising by H. Beam Piper.